The night was cold, but the chill that ran down your spine had nothing to do with the weather. Your heart pounded violently as you stood in front of men. Your eyes were wide with disbelief. The man you had loved unconditionally for years, the one you had given your heart and soul to, had just told you he was getting married to someone else. Your breath hitched as you struggled to process his words. You said yes. Your voice cracked with pain. Men, tell me you're joking. He looked at you, eyes clouded with something unreadable, guilt, pain, regret. You didn't know. All you knew was that the love you had built with him was crumbling before your eyes. I'm sorry, he murmured. His voice was barely above a whisper. You are sorry? A bitter laugh escaped your lips. Min, we have been together for years. I loved you, I still love you, and you are telling me you are marrying her just like that? His jaw tightened and hands clenched into fists at his sides. I didn't have a choice. Bullshit. You took a step closer, shaking your head furiously. You always have a choice. If you loved me, you would have fought for us. You would have. Your voice cracked. Min turned away, unable to meet your eyes. That hurt even more. You never meant it, did you? All those nights, all those promises, they meant nothing to you. His shoulders tensed. They meant everything to me. Then why? You grabbed his arm, forcing him to look at you. Why are you doing this? He looked at you then, and for a moment you thought he would finally tell you the truth, but then just as quickly he looked away. I'm sorry, he whispered again. Stop saying that, you screamed. Tell me why, man. Tell me why you are breaking my heart. You received nothing but silence from his side. Your breath hitched, a sob choking in your throat. Then realization hit you like a truck. It's my father, isn't it? Min flinched. That was all the confirmation you needed. He threatened you, didn't he? Min remained silent, his gaze fixed on the floor. You would rather break my heart than fight him? Your voice broke, the last shred of hope inside you shattered. You would rather hurt me than tell me the truth. I can't tell you, just please let me go, forget about me. Your hands trembled as you let them fall to your sides. Your entire world was crumbling and he was letting it happen. Fine, go marry her. Min took a deep breath as if he wanted to say something else, but instead he simply turned around and walked away. You watched his disappearing figure, tears streaming down your face. He didn't fight for you, he didn't even try. And that hurt more than anything. The night Min walked away from you, he didn't just leave, you shattered. It wasn't just heartbreak, it was devastation, betrayal, and a loss so deep it felt like drowning. You had spent years prioritizing his happiness, making sure he smiled, making sure he never felt alone, and yet, in the end, he walked away from you like it all meant nothing. For days you waited for him to come back, to say it was all a mistake, but he never did. For weeks, you barely ate, barely slept. Every time you closed your eyes, you saw his face, his lips forming those words over and over again. I'm sorry. Sorry wasn't enough. You tried to move on, but every little thing reminded you of him. The way he used to hold your hand, the way he would look at you like you were his entire world. Had it all been a lie, you never get to know. One night, curled up into your bed in the US, you screamed into your pillow, punching it, clawing at the sheets, wishing the pain would stop, but it didn't. It never did. You hated him, you loved him, and you missed him. But most of all, you resented him. Months passed, but the pain never faded, and then one day the truth came crashing down. Your father, the man who had controlled your life since the day you were born, the powerful, ruthless mafia boss who never let anyone cross him. It had been him all along. Min never left because he wanted to, he left because he had to. Your father had threatened him, forced him to walk away, given him no other choice. You could almost hear the conversation in your head, your father's cold, menacing voice. warning Min to stay away from his daughter or face consequences. And Min wasn't strong enough to fight him. He had chosen to walk away, hadn't even tried to fight for you, hadn't even told you the truth. That hurt more than anything else, and what was worse, he was already married. The moment you found out, the last shred of hope inside you died. Min was gone forever. That was the moment you knew there was nothing left for you here, not in the US, not with your father, not in your past. So you made the hardest decision of your life. You left everything behind, your family, your old life, your pain, and you moved to Korea. Not because you were running away, but because you needed to start over. The moment you stepped into Incheon airport, the exhaustion of your long flight weighed on you, but the air felt different, new, free. You rolled your suitcase behind you, adjusting your bag over your shoulder, focused on getting a taxi. You stumbled backward as your body collided with someone. Your suitcase slipped from your grip. Before you could hit the ground, strong hands caught you, steadying you with ease. Whoa, careful, a deep voice murmured. You looked up, meeting dark eyes framed by soft, messy black hair. The stranger smirked slightly, as if amused by your clumsiness. You pulled away quickly, flustered. I'm sorry, I wasn't looking. He chuckled. It's fine, I was actually the one in your way. You bent down to grab your suitcase, and before you could reach it, he had already picked it up, handing it back to you effortlessly. Thanks, you muttered, gripping the handle. He nodded but didn't move away immediately. Instead, his gaze lingered on you for a second too long. You shifted under his stare, suddenly feeling unsettled. New in town? He asked casually. You frowned slightly. How do you know? The way you keep looking around like you don't quite belong here yet. You straightened your posture, not wanting to give anything away. Just visiting. He hummed as if he didn't quite believe you. Well, welcome to Seoul then, he said smoothly before stepping aside. Try not to bump into any more strangers. You scoffed lightly, shaking your head as you walked away. You didn't look back, and you didn't see the way his smirk faded into something more calculating. Jungkook watched you leave, slipping his hands into his pockets. You had no idea that he already knew exactly who you were, and no idea that he had followed you here. Adjusting to life in Korea was strange. You rented a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood far from the life you once knew. You spent most of your days exploring the city, getting lost in the streets, trying to forget. A week later, you found a small cafe near your apartment. It was quiet, tucked away from the city's noise, perfect for someone trying to disappear. You were stirring your coffee absent-mindedly when someone slid into the seat across from you. Your head snapped up. It was him, the stranger from the airport. You narrowed your eyes. Are you stalking me? Jungkook smirked, leaning back in his chair. I could ask you the same thing. First the airport, now my favorite cafe. You scoffed. This is my first time here. Exactly, he teased. That's what a stalker would say. You rolled your eyes. Unbelievable. Despite yourself, you found your lips twitching slightly. The waiter arrived, setting a black coffee in front of him. Wait, you actually do come here often? You asked, skeptical. He shrugged. Maybe. You shook your head, deciding not to entertain him. Enjoy your coffee, stranger. As you both sat in silence, you couldn't help but stare at him. Staring is rude, you know. Your breath hissed. He was breathtaking. You turned away quickly, grabbing your coffee, but before you could leave, he was in front of you, blocking your path. Wait, I was just joking. You look like you have seen a ghost. You narrowed your eyes, and you look like someone who enjoys bothering strangers. He chuckled. Fair point, but I don't think we should be strangers. You raised a brow. Oh, and why is that? He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a teasing whisper. Because something tells me that you, like me, have a story to tell. Your heart dropped. He could see the pain in your eyes, but you were not in a position to trust anyone now, and he was a stranger. What's your name? You asked. He grinned. Jungkook, and you? You didn't say anything and left, making him chuckle softly. I will erase all that pain from your eyes, Ryan. A month had passed, you were adjusting to Seoul, slowly building a routine. You told yourself the stranger, Jungkook, was just a coincidence, an amusing run-in, but then it kept happening. Like today, when you were browsing a quiet bookstore, you reached for a book only for another hand to grab it at the same time. You froze, so did he. Slowly you turned your head. Okay, now you're following me. You accused, crossing your arms. He smirked, flipping the book open. Maybe I just have good taste. You snatched the book from him, glaring. Maybe you should stop showing up everywhere I go. Maybe you should stop going where I already am. You stare at him, annoyed but slightly amused. He grinned. You were smiling. You quickly turned away. I'm not. Sure, sure, he said, watching you as you paid for the book and walked out. Before leaving, you stopped and looked at him. I wish we never meet again, and if we did, I will not hesitate and file a complaint against you. He laughed. Wow, that is scary. You didn't say anything else and walked away, but you couldn't help but notice that you were smiling. Something about him was different, although you were here for a fresh start and promised yourself that you'll never fall in love again. But this time, you were very aware of how hard your heart was beating. Don't know how and why, you found yourself in the same cafe again and again. You became regular here, and today you found Jungkook. It's like you wanted to never meet him, yet you wanted to see him again and again. He was a stranger you bumped on the first day, and you feel like he's somehow making you feel like you're not alone in a different country. Jungkook had a habit of staring at you, not in an uncomfortable way, not in a way that made you feel uneasy, but in a way that made you feel seen, like now. As you sat across from him at a cafe, absently stirring your coffee while your mind drifted to places you swore you wouldn't go anymore. You do that a lot. He suddenly broke the silence, bringing you back in the real world. Do what? Disappear into your head, he said, watching you carefully, like you're somewhere else entirely. You forced a small smile. Maybe I just have a lot on my mind. Maybe, he said, tilting his head. Or maybe you're holding something in. You stiffened slightly. There it was again. That same question he had asked before, worded differently each time but always carrying the same meaning. Was it that obvious that you were broken? You cleared your throat, forcing your expression into something neutral. Why would I tell my personal life to a stranger I met a few months ago? Jungkook raised a brow. A stranger? You hesitated. No, he wasn't a stranger anymore, but still, you couldn't tell him. So you looked away, pretending you didn't see the way his jaw clenched slightly, as if he knew you were shutting him out. He didn't ask again, not that day. But he never stopped looking at you like he was waiting. Weeks passed. You hadn't seen Jungkook in a while. Maybe that was good. Maybe it wasn't, but fate wasn't done with you yet. It was late when you decided to walk home. The city was quieter at this hour, street lights flickering, the air crisp against your skin. Then voices, low, hushed but urgent. You weren't the type to get involved, But then you heard a familiar voice, very familiar, and it was Jungkook's. You moved closer, staying hidden as you peered around the corner. Jungkook stood in the dimly lit alleyway, three men in black suits surrounding him. One of them handed him a thick envelope. You didn't have to see inside to know it was money. Keep it quiet, we don't need more attention. Your stomach twisted. This wasn't some harmless misunderstanding. Jungkook wasn't just some charming guy who kept showing up in your life. He was something else, something dangerous. You took a step back, ready to leave, but then his eyes lifted and locked onto yours. For a moment, neither of you moved. Then he sighed, running a hand through his hair. You shouldn't be here. Your heart pounded. Who are you? Jungkook studied you carefully, his face unreadable. Go home, Wayan. The way he said your name sent a shiver down your spine. You swallowed hard. How do you know my name? He didn't answer. You took another step back, and then, for the first time in months, Jungkook wasn't the one following you. You were the one walking away. But you had a feeling this wasn't the end, not even close. After that night, you expected Jungkook to disappear. You expected him to leave you alone, to let you pretend you had never found out who he really was. You were wrong, because 3 days later, he showed up at your door. You hesitated before opening it, your fingers gripping the handle tightly. When you finally swung the door open, Jungkook stood there, hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. You look like you're about to slam the door in my face. You were considering it, instead you crossed your arms. Why are you here? Jungkook leaned against the door frame. You left before I could explain. Explain? You scoffed. What exactly were you planning to explain, Jungkook? That you are not the simple guy I thought you were? That you are involved in things I don't even want to know about? He sighed. You think I'm dangerous? Are you saying you're not? There was silence. You exhaled sharply, shaking your head. That's what I thought. You started to close the door, but Jungkook's hand shot out, stopping it. Give me 5 minutes. If you still want me to leave after that, I will. Something in his voice made you pause. And against your better judgment, you stepped aside, letting him in. You realized he wasn't any stranger. He knew so much more than you would know. You sat on opposite ends of your small living room, the air between you thick with tension. You were never supposed to find out this way, but I wasn't lying to you, not completely. You folded your arms. Then tell me the truth. He exhaled slowly. I'm not just some random guy who kept running into you. I knew who you were before you even moved to Korea. Your stomach twisted. What? Jungkook leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. I've always known you, Wayan. Your heart pounded in your chest. What do you mean? Jungkook hesitated, and then he dropped the bomb. I'm your father's business partner's son. The words fell like a slap. You blinked, struggling to process. No. A whisper left from your mouth, but deep down something clicked. The familiarity, the way he always seemed to understand you, like he had known you longer than you realized. Your hands curled into fist. So what? My father sent you to spy on me? Jungkook's jaw clenched. No, he sent me to protect you. You laughed bitterly. Protect me? From what? From the truth about Min. Your breath caught in your throat. Jungkook's gaze was unwavering. You think your father destroyed your relationship? That he threatened Min because he wanted to control your life? You swallowed hard. He did. No, he didn't. Your father didn't break you and Min apart. Min was already cheating on you. Your father only found out the truth before you did. The air left your lungs? No, that couldn't be true. Min, he wouldn't. He was weak. He couldn't fight against your father because he knew your father was too powerful, but you never thought he would cheat on you. You got up believing your father and Jungkook was making this up, so you forgive them. No, don't try to change the truth. Min was helpless. You guys threatened him. My father did. Jungkook's voice softened. I know it's hard to hear, but your father didn't threaten Min for no reason. He warned him to stay away from you because Min had already betrayed you. No, stop. Jungkook knew you wouldn't believe him, and although he didn't want to bring that pain back, but he had no choice. He took out a bunch of photographs from his pocket and showed you. Your heart dropped. Min was with his current wife. And those pictures were from the time when you both were together and you had no idea what was going on behind your back. Min wasn't helpless, he was a mastermind. He loved you, but he didn't want to deal with your father, so he played that game. Your vision blurred. It wasn't your father, it was Min. Min who you had loved unconditionally. Min who you had cried for. Min who had chosen to walk away because he had never been yours to begin with. Your voice was barely a whisper. Why didn't anyone tell me? Jungkook said because you left before they could, and your father knew you wouldn't believe him. Tears pricked at your eyes, but you refused to let them fall. You had spent months drowning in heartbreak, mourning a love that was never real. Jungkook watched you carefully. That's why I followed you here. Your father was worried about you. He knew you would never let him help you, so he sent me. You let out a shaky breath, and you just agreed. His eyes darkened slightly. I would have come even if he hadn't asked. Something in his tone made your stomach flip. You swallowed. Why? Jungkook hesitated, then he leaned back, watching you with a gaze so intense it made your heart pound. Because I've always been in love with you, Ryan. Your breath hitched. Jungkook's lips curled into a sad smile. You never knew I existed, but I've known you for years. Your mind reeled. Jungkook had always been there, watching, protecting, loving you in silence. And now you didn't know what scared you more, the truth about your past or the fact that despite everything, your heart was starting to beat for someone new. Your lips trembled as you looked at him, your heart pounding against your ribs. You say you have always loved me, but why? Jungkook exhaled, his dark eyes locked onto yours with an intensity that made it hard to breathe because you were always meant to be mine, even when you didn't know I existed. You shook your head, tears slipping down your cheeks. You could have told me. You could have. I couldn't. He cut you off, his voice thick with emotion, because you loved someone else. The truth crashed into you like a tidal wave. You had spent years chasing a love that was never yours, while Jungkook had stood in the shadows, watching and waiting. Even if you tie 40 knots of rope to someone who wants to leave, you can't hold them. But for those who want to stay, a single strand of hair is enough. Your breath caught. Min had left even when you gave him everything, but Jungkook had stayed even when he had nothing from you, even when all he had was hope. Your hands trembled as you reached for him, the weight of your past pressing against your chest. And you are still here. Jungkook let out a quiet, almost broken laugh. I was always here, Ryan. And in that moment, as his arms wrapped around you, as his warmth surrounded you, you finally understood. Love was never about who you held on to, it was about who never let go. And he took responsibility to fix something he never broke.